Hi, hello everybody. Thank you so much, CJ, for joining us on this podcast on a Friday afternoon. We have heard about you a lot, right? I went to your profile. I saw you have been into, a lot of academic works as well, besides being into the industry for quite a long time. Why not you take it up, for a couple of minutes and introduce yourself to to our audience, talking about your journey right from when you started with Accenture and you went ahead and now lead innovation entrepreneurship and teach a lot of his stuff in strategy inside good pay schools.
Absolutely. I will try to give you the just 2-minute version of like 25 or 30 years. So I trained as an accountant, a CPA, a CMA. Did I ever work in that capacity? Of course not. Like everybody does now, you learn one thing, you apply it somewhere else, and a lot of innovation comes from that. So I took a job with Accenture, which back then was Arthur Andersen and Company, so it wasn't that big a stretch, and immediately went to work creating big systems, mainframes, early online systems for like Defense Department, United Airlines, all kind of folks. And after a while, I got the chance to make a transition back into academe because I decided I wanted to be a professor. I actually really enjoyed teaching, and we had the huge budget cuts in Washington, D.C. So 550 of us were all like thrown out of work at the same time. So I took that opportunity to move to Japan and live with a family that I had taught earlier and teach. And then I went and got my doctorate in business administration at Harvard Business School in IT and economic development, international business, all that good stuff. So afterwards, I became computer science faculty, and that lasted all of a year. I couldn't hack the bureaucracy. I just couldn't stand it. So I founded my first consulting firm, the first of two, and we did that for a while. I eventually went back to Accenture, but as a strategist in Asia. I was in Singapore, and we had just coined the term e-commerce, and everybody was so excited, and it was just a wonderful time. And then I also went to a boutique firm for that. So then, of course, the dot-com crashed. Boom. And everybody was thrown out of work, thrown out of IT, thrown out of financial services, everything. So I became an entrepreneur and also started a family, which was a very, very big thing for me and for my family. And after about like 15 years or so of that, I popped up and said, okay, I'm running global businesses from Europe and I've got the kids, but I really want to go home to Asia. So I took a job at SPJ Global and we came over here to Singapore, and that was over a decade ago. I didn't think that was going to happen, but it did, and I'm happy. I'm glad. And I was brought in to head up an innovation and entrepreneurship center. So, okay, I'm an entrepreneur, consulting, innovation. I had also led, co-founded an innovation center to help corporates in the e-commerce days. So that was cool. And from there, went on to write books and speak and do a whole lot of other things. So I've done a lot of stuff. Oh, and somewhere in the mix, a little over 20 years ago, I co-founded with family and friends a not-for-profit organization in India to help the tiger, help the environment, and help the people.
Help the tiger, help the environment, and help the people because all the three are
Yep,
interconnected.
the Tiger Center.
Yes. Great. So, CJ, we will start with some bit about innovation because these days a lot of big companies have got innovation teams which evaluate a lot of digital technology products from across the globe and see, what fits into their schema of things. I'm sure, you must have worked with a lot of, financial services organizations, helping them with IT and
And
strategy.
other industries too.
Yeah, the other industries as well. So we'll start with the financial services as such. Is that what do you think are the major breakthrough technologies that are shaping the financial industry right now, and what seems to be the future?
Like everybody else, financial services is taking advantage of GenAI. Instead of search engine optimization to help get clients, they're doing AI engine optimization, AIEO. It's a huge problem in financial services, like a lot of other companies, to have legacy systems. And if you go talk to Oracle, like I did pretty recently, they said, yes, we do help clients take advantage of AI, but first that is very digital, that is very data dependent.
Yes.
So we've got to dig into the data that you've got, the legacy systems you've got, create data lakes, data fabric, and all of that, and cleaning up data. It's a huge investment. I did talk to a startup founder, though, who said, oh, no, these days you don't need to do that. You can put a layer of agentic AI on top of those systems and then work from there. And I also had connected before then with, I believe it was Naveen Suri,
Yes.
who, he founded a company that does something brilliant. Everybody knows about digital twins for physical assets and for processes. And now for people, I've got one, but he made technology that will digitally twin your digital assets. And then you build on top of that and take advantage of GenAI and AI agents and so forth. And that technology was just bought a few months ago by Accenture. So those are some of the many technologies that are coming out and revolutionizing financial services.
Absolutely. And just on a side note, actually, CJ, this is what we are doing at Dawdle as well. So what we do is that we bring in the customer stories of various products on our platform, and we show it to the enterprise buyers so that they have, because what we believe is that the only source of truth for any product is the customer story, what they have implemented so far. And to reduce the buyer regret of buying a technology, it's very important to give them an access to what has happened with that technology in a similar company. So that's what we do in Dawdle. But
Those
now
case studies are
case studies, yeah.
gold. And
Yes.
especially they're going to ask you about cybersecurity because that's top of everybody's mind, et cetera. Yeah.
And because exactly what you just talked about. So the legacy systems, and because it was developed at a time when people used to believe that horizontal SaaS is everything, because there were no good integrations. Like, integration was a big headache for the companies, to integrate one thing with the other. So they went with products like SAP, Oracle, or something like that. But now I feel, and I would like to take your insights on that. I feel is that companies are looking for more vertical SaaS, because products do well in a particular niche. If there is a product which is serving a particular niche, that is always better than a product which expands across the organization. In terms of efficiency, in terms of productivity. But what has been your experience like, working with the clients? What are the major challenges which they face while they are undergoing a digital transformation stuff, and, related things?
Thinking back to the beginning of our conversation where I mentioned building big systems, and it was the late 80s when I did that. We never intended for our systems to last 20 years and more. We really weren't thinking about that. Yes, you need the deep systems, but you also do need them going across the organization, because when you need to problem solve, generally you need to problem solve across the organization. Those are the really tough ones, and you need tech to back you up in that. So I don't mean to disagree and contradict you, but I would say that instead of vertical tech or horizontal tech, what we need is a network of tech and bits of tech that can seamlessly talk to each other. And, some of that tech nowadays is coming out of AI generated startups who are attacking the bottom and the middle of the market that's being addressed now by the big enterprise systems. And then per disruption theory, they will slowly eat their way up.
Absolutely. Now, what is this innovation audit like? People talk about innovation audits and toolkits and all that. Can you shed some light on what is an innovation audit? How do organizations do that?
So I personally have not been involved in any innovation audits, but I do know that companies want to systematize innovation in the same way that Thomas Edison systematized it at GE so many, many years ago. His point was, no, it's not inspiration and genius and that's it. It is a systematic way of going about things. So an organization, yes, should really be thinking, number one, does it need innovation? And I think most of us know the answer to that. Somebody else is going to come in and take your customers and offer better products if you don't. So what are your innovation structures? Do you have centers? Are they connected? How many people are innovating? Is it a culture of innovation so that everybody who's on the bottom of the organization doing the work comes up with ideas, and are they engaged enough to do so? Then you get into the whole disengaged workforce problem. There's also infrastructures like the one that IDEO put together for P&G to connect 30,000 scientists and product developers worldwide. Because what we're discovering is innovation is not just something in the R&D labs in one or more. It's a whole network of people who need to find the technologies and the people who have the knowledge or maybe unfinished innovations that can now be used. I mean, what comes to mind is Steve Jobs when the iPhone came out and it was in his pocket and it was rattling around with keys and change. And he took it out and he's like, oh my God, this thing is going to get scratched up by everybody's keys and change. What are we going to do? So did they have the tech? No, he called up the CEO of Corning, which years before had been trying to make a special windshield glass. And he's like, I want that and I want you to make it now. So they went through the R&D cycle faster than they ever had before. And that was the start of Gorilla Glass. So we need innovation systems, people, structures, incentives, all of that kind of stuff within organizations. But now increasingly, we need those structures to be across the organization and with outside organizations. So innovation audit, let's go through and measure all that.
That's true, actually, Means absolutely right, Means because I still remember while I was taking care of innovation portfolio at one of the MNCs, kind of 7, 8 years back. The biggest challenge was that a lot of these consulting firms will bring in the right solutions, but to get them implemented on ground across the teams require a special change management principles, and that is where these all kind of concepts like time to value becomes very important, because people want to see is it actually bringing change to our life as soon as possible, so as you can motivate the people towards it. Now with this, my next.
Sorry. If I could hop in there and build on that, one of the things that we're finding now with GenAI is those initiatives should not actually be led by the CIO. The
Yes.
CIO needs to give guidance and guardrails and all of that. But CIO, like any other C-suite individual, has no idea what happens on the ground or how the organization actually works. And they can't. That's not their job. So they've got to set kind of the context so that the people on the ground can innovate ways to use these new technologies. And we're going to see a lot more grassroots innovation going on within
You're very
those,
right.
within.
Yeah. When you say grassroots, it just kind of resonates, because you're absolutely right. Once people across the organization are empowered to think innovative, there's a lot of $1 ideas that actually starts coming in. So CJ, you're absolutely right. Once there is a feeling of innovation across the organizations, a lot of $1 ideas starts coming up. $1, $2 ideas, rather than big budgeted ideas. And those ideas have really the potential to change a lot of processes, for the betterment. So you're right. So we were also creating an innovation pipeline, kind of making sure that even a supervisor or an engineer on ground should have that kind of, a setup, a mechanism where he can push push his ideas top, rather than it's going to be a top down approach. It should also be a bottom up approach, because those people are actually facing problems on ground. And to some
And
extent,
there's a stunning amount of money a value that can be unlocked with those ground up innovations. It's huge. And companies who do that get huge benefit.
absolutely, CJ. So now I will go to, I will kind of take your mind on a bit of consulting work that you have done. Whenever a consultant or a consulting organization start working with a client, the first thing what they do is that understand their processes. What is their process like? It's called the AGIS process. And then they design an AGIF process. So while they're designing the AGIS process, CJ, they actually start talking to a lot of technology products which can solve, for that process and can make it a better process. And you must have been in that cycle a lot of times, where you have to evaluate products from the market, see which will be the best fit for your client, and then get them introduced there. What were some of the parameters that you used to look for while you discover that kind of a product, evaluate them, analyze them? What was your process like?
To be honest, I haven't done a lot of that kind of work, but I have supervised a few projects that are related to that. I mean, you have to understand the organization itself. What kind of strategic vision do they have, and what kind of time frame do they have? Are they actually agile? What sort of rollouts can they handle, and what sort of data do they have, and existing technologies do they have that the new software is going to have to integrate with? And one key reason to go out and get a consultant who knows about all of the different software products, like an Accenture or somebody else, is that they are independent. So one thing is, how stable is the technology itself? How stable is the company, the vendor itself? How integrated can it be with the existing systems? Don't take shortcuts in terms of identifying your processes and your data and your systems now, because I've seen companies later who they were like, oh my God, well, yeah, this is a great thing, but we didn't really understand ourselves first. Yes. Also, what kind of growth trajectory do the vendors have? What sort of innovation processes do they have? What sort of pricing and flexibility? I mean, IBM, for example, they realized a long time ago, companies are not all going to be able to have multi-million-dollar system design, build, and integrations. And now they provide software as a service to startups, and they charge per API call, which is pretty amazing. That's a very non-IBM thing, you would think. But they're like, no, we know you're at the beginning of your journey. We want to be there and grow with you as you grow. So that's a very smart approach. So which of your vendors are willing to take that kind of approach, et cetera?
Yeah. Now I'll get back to your, graduation subject. So you graduated in finance and accounting, and you have, you have done, quite a bit of work around that, as I can see in your experience. Tell us, CJ, a few of the use cases of AI, ML coming on, which is helping the finance teams inside the organizations, maybe from your experience of working with various clients.
Funny enough, I'm just about to teach JP Morgan Chase case that's just been published at Harvard Business School on their use of AI. So one of the things that AI can do in financial services is everybody is accustomed to the AI companion, which as you're talking to a private banking client can say, oh, did you know we have these other products as well? And, you'll need to consider these issues as well. But with actually Streams AI is a platform for sales teams. Let's face it, financial services organizations do traditionally operate with sales forces, basically. It goes way beyond the companion suggestion AI into actually having a score, a pulse score of the knowledge of the person who is selling. And financial services is extremely complex. So yes, it requires a great deal of learning and how confident that person is in presenting these financial services products, tools, and solutions. And that pulse score is directly correlated with customer satisfaction and the sales outcomes. So now, for the first time, you've got a metric for learning. So L&D budgets are always under threat. It's a metric that's tied to learning and the revenues, so yes, we're going to invest in this thing because here's the money that we make with it and without it. So there's tools like that are very, very helpful. Another thing is, I don't remember if it's a financial services example or not, but KPMG studied one of their clients and their optional gamified learning simulation. And it was all about the products and services that the company offered. Nobody had to do the training, totally optional, but people started. And then, oh my God, they got so much better at their job, and it was measurable. And then they told other people and more people and more people and more people. And then they gathered the data to figure out that offices that used the training had 25% more new clients, a certain percentage more new revenue per client, and all kinds of metrics. So part of what organizations need are those kind of tools. And part of what you need is to collect the data to figure out before, during, and after, is this really having an impact on us and on our clients? And there's tons of client metrics too. The spend per client, the longevity of the client, the speed to onboarding, how many new clients, first-time clients you're getting, and the wallet share. There's tons of stuff. But you've got to figure out what data is going to make what case that you're interested in. So it all requires a great deal of thought, and you can have your GenAI help you with that.
Yes.
Another thing that's useful to these organizations, financial services is very, very cautious, and rightfully so.
Yes.
So large language model, OpenAI, is often not going to benefit from them because they can't release the data, but they can make small language model closed AI systems just for them.
This is very insightful because, this is a nightmare for a lot of startups who are building in the financial spaces, to get
Yes.
entry.
Yes.
Now, I will kind of, CJ, I will take you back to your, recent adventure that you're doing at SPJ for the last 10 years. You have been taking care of executive education, innovation, entrepreneurship. Executive education plays a very important role because everybody can't go to a college for like 2-3 years again to do an MBA or to do any any other postgraduate degree. There are a lot of people who have to work. Where do you see? But there has not been too much technology involved while you see the way in which executive education is being imparted. But as I was going through a lot of articles, what I found is that there's a lot of use of AI that's happening in imparting that education. Simulator, case studies and all these things are coming up. Tell us a bit about how executive education is being transformed with the help of technology, being in place.
Well, where we are, for example, I mean, let me start off by saying that the industrial age model of education was learn, earn, return. You learn something, you earn money doing that thing you learned, and then you stop working in the marketplace and return good things to society. Now it's learn, earn, return all the way through your lifetime.
Yes.
Everybody's going to be learning all the time, especially because everything is changing constantly and your tools are changing within 3 to 5 years. Your skills need to do the same, la, 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 la. And learning is also the linchpin of innovation. So the earning part, yes, you've got to keep an eye on that, but remember to tie the learning into the innovation, which helps with the earnings and return. Doing something meaningful. Organizations are really, it's not an AI issue. They're having to make sure that their workforce knows the good for society that they do and the good for their own people and the good for their customers. So where I am at SPJ Global, we've got the AIELT, the AI enabled learning tutor. It's a one-to-one tutor and it's a brilliant, brilliant tool, proprietary. I've not seen it anywhere else. And I've got a video that I can share with you in which you can see real students interacting with the real AIELT. It's audio visual and it's a conversation with what looks like a human tutor, and it can coach you not only to learn stuff, but also to present it well. And another thing we have are the ELO studios. So those are terrific studios with like 75 people on a screen. Everybody's in the same position week after week. So one of the things that happens with those ELO studios is that relationship development is much easier, and I can see everybody's name a lot easier. So I learn people's names and faces, and I know this person over there, I should have them do point counterpoint with that person over there because I remember them spatially. And it's also supported by simultaneous translation because we've got global groups in there. And the facilitator is full body walking around what looks like a television studio. And it's very, very engaging. Another thing that I do is micro learning. So when I put out a multimedia textbook on design thinking. And when I take groups, whether they're exec ed or MBAs, when I take people through them, they learn a little something with a video or, reading or, something really small. And then they've got to do an exercise or use that idea on your project. And it's a little snippet of information and do something and share something with the community. and then your idea that's out there, you're inviting feedback from others. And so you've got to give the feedback as well. And then people can also connect on that platform and co-create and collaborate outside of the platform. So a little learning, a little action, a little learning, a little action, a little learning, a little action. So again, it's the bringing together of learning and performance. So those are some of the things. And then of course there's my digital twin. I came up with her before our AIELT. And she's just a copy of me, an AI copy of me. I fed her my books, articles, videos, my websites, all kinds of stuff, and instructed her, hey, you are a digital version of me. And if all of this material doesn't cover what somebody's asking, then give a GenAI sort of response. And she has the capability to talk to ChatGPT and Perplexity and all these other kind of Gen AIs. But first and foremost, she helps people take the ideas and apply them to their situations. So there's a whole lot of the learning tech that's pretty cool and useful now.
Absolutely, and there's a lot of the institutions have a long way to go, because if you find even the very senior educational institutions in India, I feel executive education is somewhere not technologically enabled, and that basically leads to a person completing the education, say an MBA degree from a college through a distance learning or some executive thing, but he doesn't gain a lot out of it. But with the technology that you are talking about, I think it becomes very interactive. People learn and people actually contribute to their organization better. I think a lot of organizations will also be interested in sending their people, to colleges like yours.
Absolutely. And there's things like virtual reality. For example, if in an MBA classroom, the executives are talking about a case, maybe, like a car company putting out a robotic factory and so forth. Well, fine, everybody, put on your headsets and let's go.
Yes.
And you can take the whole class into the actual factory and talk with the factory manager and some of the workers, and everybody can see something different. Their eyes are going to different places, and then come back into your shared online or physical experience, and you were really there. It's a richer experience. Another thing that happened with the studio is that when we did the video for the ELO, the CEO of the company was traveling, so okay, he couldn't be part of that case discussion. But we did a very Harvard Business School kind of thing, which is one of my favorite things. Have the actual CEO come in at the end of class, and he was calling in to our studio from Heathrow Airport between flights. So all of a sudden, you can bring in the actual people to say, okay, after the case that you studied and you've been discussing, here's what we did as an organization, and here's some new issues. And it's the conversations after the publications that are so valuable. What's really, really new that hasn't even been written yet.
And that is so true. Even executive education is good, but even at the school level, CJ, I think there's a lot of role of AR and VR, which students kind of visualize the things. So just for an example, you're taught about soil erosion, suppose soil erosion, forestation, and all those things we read in the book as a second year, third-year-old kid. If this guy can have some set which can take him to the jungle and can kind of show him how this soil erosion is happening, and how deforestation is affecting you. It has so great use cases which I think are yet to be exploited, and this will make the students innovative. This will help them avoid mugging up stuff, which a lot of students still do, mug up the things and kind of vomit it inside the exams.
And one of the things that happened in one of my design thinking workshops was there were some groups who wanted to do some social good among some of the world's poorest people. So I'm like, yeah. My not-for-profit corporation works with those guys. And so they had audio video experiences just with WhatsApp, going out and getting a tour of a village and a villager's home and the situation that we were trying to design for. And they talked to the people, some with translation. So they had a real experience, but they didn't even have to fly over there. Just any day you want, you can connect with somebody and enter a new reality and learn and think about stuff that, yeah, these are the problems we need to deal with. Let's automate away some of the stuff that machines do better. But this is something that, finding needs and handling unstructured situations is what humans are better at.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely right. This is what machines can't take
Yeah,
care, because they work on data which is already there, but they can't think of a foresight.
that's the point. When you have no data and you don't know what's wrong, you need a human for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, are you only dealing with Singapore, or you also come to this SPJ in India office as well, because they have got an institution here as well inside India?
Yeah, so SPJ and School of Global Management is in Mumbai, Dubai, Sydney, now part of the SPJ Group, London and Silicon Valley. So I've been to the Sydney, Mumbai, and Dubai campuses. Silicon Valley and London are quite new. I haven't been up there yet, but yeah, I do get out some. But we've got people everywhere, and there's a lot of value in that. People who know the local context.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the real value of MBA education is about globalization only, because unless or until you see how other things are working, you know, you can't kind of devise a strategy which is actually global.
And that's the whole idea of the school when it was founded a little over 20 years ago. As businesses have gone global, well, so too business schools should go global. Why are you going to sit in a classroom somewhere? You need to be out in different countries, and you need to be integrated with the business community. So we do a lot of projects for like Google and UBS, and my design guys are doing Unilever projects and so forth. So work with the actual companies in the actual locations, helping with problems that are there and that are real.
It was great talking to you, CJ.
This is 70. Take care.